So do we as a party need to be open and honest? Yes, we absolutely do. I fully believe that people recognise that we are in a deep, deep hole, and they're open for change. And that then comes back to why we have to have good councillors, because the councillors should set the policy and the political agenda and hold the officers and the executive teams to account. That's what they exist for. Otherwise, what's the point?
Hello, and a warm welcome to the Reform Party podcast. I think I'm right in saying that this is a first. It's the first time that we've ever had two Scots together on the podcast. So can I start by welcoming my guest? And it's Jonathan Mackie. Hello, Jonathan.
Hi, Ken. I may be Scottish, but I'm pretty anglicised now. Approaching 30 years in Merseyside, or Merseyside.
Yeah, I'm the same. Yeah.
So it's pretty good, really.
Let's start with Scotland, though, because we've got some very interesting elections coming up in Scotland in May, haven't we? This is for the Scottish Parliament. How do you think Reform's going to do?
I think the SNP will win. I think Reform will probably end up being the second party. The challenge is it's the PR, the nature of the PR up in Scotland. Although we had a good council by-election win. It was last week, the week before.
That's right.
Which showed that the single transferable vote still did come through for Reform. So I think we'll probably win the top up. We'll probably win a lot of seats on there. Whether we win on effectively the constituency ballots, I think that might be perhaps challenging for a new party initially. We may win some. I suspect we might pick up the seats that have been traditionally Conservative, but the top up seats I think we'll do pretty well on.
One thing that occurred to me, because we're a very new party, probably even a newer party up in Scotland than we are down here. How on earth do you go about compiling a list of for the top up with people who you probably don't really know?
Well, exactly. It's the same issue we're having in terms of our candidate selection down here for our local elections. People who are coming forward who haven't actually been active in politics at all in their life, but seeing that there's a necessity for change and to do something to affect the country at large, really. And so they're presenting themselves, but they don't have this kind of hinterland in politics, so they're new to it. How do you select them? How do you select the correct people, particularly in Scotland when you've got?
So how do you do it?
Regional seats. I think you've got to. Obviously they'll be vetted. They go through the appropriate vetting process, but I think at a local and a Scotland level, regional level, because of the regional top-up seats, you've got to interview these people. You've got to meet with them. You've always got to see them active on the doorstep and how they engage with people prior to appointing them to, in Scotland's case, into the list, or in my case here in Halton, into wards that we are looking to succeed on and win in May. So it's a particular challenge. The thing with Scotland is the SNP are so deeply embedded in some parts of Scotland now. When I was growing up, probably similar to you, my dad was a local councillor. He was on Tayside Regional Council and then Dundee City Council, and up to 1986 they were part of the administration, and then the SNP started to make some inroads, and then he became leader of the opposition. And once Tayside Region had been lost at that time to Labour and then subsequently to the SNP. But in the East Coast, which you'd probably be familiar with, and they were Tartan Tories, and in the West Coast they were to the left of the Labour Party, probably similar to how the Lib Dems present themselves today. But they're the most vicious political force, I think, you'll ever experience. I spoke when you and I met at Sarah Pochin's event in Chester the other week. When I got on stage and had my sort of 5 minutes, 10-minute speech, I did say that, in terms of what Reform are facing across the country, the vitriol that we'll be facing coming up to the local elections next year and then beyond into the general election will be something that is probably unknown, certainly probably unknown in England, whereas those of us that have kind of grew up in Scottish politics, we've probably seen it from the SNP. Well, I know I certainly have. And that, I think that you've got to experience it to see it. And that the SNP are that, and they very much they pull on the heartstrings. It's very visceral. It's very, you're a traitor to Scotland unless you vote for the SNP, which I think is absolutely ridiculous, nationalistic, ridiculous nonsense. But I think we'll do well. I think we'll replace the Labour Party as the formal opposition in Scotland. But it'll be 2 or 3 terms before we could really kind of establish ourselves up there and break the SNP stranglehold, despite the performance of this SNP government. I mean, it must be the most left-wing government in the whole of Europe, I think, by a long way. And you just look at how services are failing. We've got the highest drug deaths, the highest sort of teenage pregnancies, the lowest private sector business formation, the lowest the highest unemployment rate in the whole of UK and in other parts of Europe. You've got a structural deficit in the economy. So even when the UK as a whole would be in surplus, Scotland would always be in deficit. It's absolutely madness. But people keep voting for it, and I think we as a party have got to see it up there. We've got to make them see that there is another way. There is change, and there's a possibility of renewal and a different way. And I do think there is a bit of a breakthrough. We've seen it, as I say, in the local authority by-election the other week, which isn't a strange play. I mean, it was West Lothian, wasn't it? So, you wouldn't exactly say it was fertile territory for those of us.
That's right.
Those who know those particular areas.
Blackburn and Whitburn.
Exactly. So things obviously changing. So that's good news. But yeah, Scotland, I think, will be a tougher nut to crack than Wales, for example.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you absolutely. When you look at the record of the SNP in office, what they've done to education, what they've done to the health service, what they've done right across the board, they have failed miserably. And yet, as you say, people still vote for them, and it's beyond my comprehension. But there you go.
Yeah, absolutely. It has, in fairness to them, which I shouldn't be, but I will be.
I'll go on.
Alex Salmond was a genius, a political genius. He really was. And he dragged basically a ragtag bunch kind of people that played Jimmy Shand records. For a living, and he dragged that into quite a modern part of political force. And I do have a bit of, I don't agree with a thing he said, but I do have a bit of admiration for the guy politically.
I mean, as a leader, he was fantastic, wasn't he? And in many senses, he's a little bit similar to how Nigel is with us, is he not?
Yeah. I think so. Yeah. He was extraordinarily popular in Scotland, across the political perspective. Even people who wouldn't vote for him would still admire him. So the guy was you can't knock it. He was a political genius. He dragged a party that was, as I say, it was a ragtag. There was nothing about them when I was young. Funnily enough, they used to win Dundee East, where I was born. So I'm from a place called Broughty Ferry, which is in the east end of Dundee, and they used to win that consistently. A chap called Gordon Wilson used to be the MP, and I think he was their sole MP for a period. So there was nothing about them. And then Salmond dragged them in, and then obviously Sturgeon kind of went on that on the coattails, and she was made by COVID, wasn't she?
Yeah. Well, she thought she was anyway.
Yeah. It's a nice caravan out of it.
Excuse me. Okay, so let's come back to somewhere closer to home, which is in your case Halton. How many council seats are there in Halton Borough Council?
So there's 18 seats, 18 wards, split split across Runcorn and Widnes. So I'm the chair of the Halton branch, which pulled together two parliamentary constituencies, Runcorn and Helsby, which I'm sure anyone in Reform is very familiar with. Sarah Ochen's successful by-election win, and also pulls in Widnes and Hale Wood. So 2 parliamentary constituencies brought together, which cover the full Halton council area. But it also, because we've got the Helsby and Frodsham parts in the branch, that sits in Cheshire West and Chester, and we've got Halewood that sits in Knowsley. So in Halton itself, there's 18 seats. And
can I ask you, how many prospective candidates have you got for those seats?
At the moment, we're probably light on about 2 or 3.
Right.
We've got people still going through vetting now.
Because your elections are next year, aren't they?
Our elections are in May. We've got a third out in May. We're pretty hopeful. I think we've got a strong. I mean, we could win all 18. Realistically, we really could. But I think realistically, we're probably looking at maybe 10 to 12. Really, that we would target. Just split Runcorn and wins. And we got good candidates, myself included. So I'll be a candidate. But the process of vetting is people are still going through vetting. So once we concluded that, we'll get people placed in seats. We've got candidates in quite a number of wards now that have been placed in there. Myself and the rest of the branch executive met the candidates that all been vetted about 3 weeks, started December, 3 weeks ago. So we met them all, talked to them about their aspirations, how they would work the wards, making sure that they were fully aware of what they were getting into, but also from us. It's so important. It's so important we get the right people elected this year, because this is our chance to make the breakthrough. If we elect people and they're maybe the wrong people, or they're not as committed as they should be, or not so much embarrass the party, but don't live up to the expectations of the electorate, we might not get another chance. So for us, it's absolutely, for me as the branch chairman and the rest of the executive, it's critical we get good people in post. And we do.
In Wirral, we decided that there's the national vetting, so everybody who's going to be a candidate goes through the national vetting process, which is more a check-up on social media and that kind of thing. We decided that wasn't enough in Wirral, so we have interviewed every single prospective candidate that's come along and interviewed them in depth. And we have regular meetings with just the candidates, so we get to know them in depth. Because the last thing you want to do is to eventually take over a council. I mean, you said you've only got a third. That's a third coming up. So even if you were to win all 18 seats, it doesn't give you control of the council. We're not until 27, but it's a full council, so we have 66 seats. So if we're looking for all those candidates, so we've almost got them, and we will certainly have them by the time of the election. But you want to know that particularly if you're taking over a council, you want to be able to trust the people who've been elected. So you need to know them in depth. It's not enough just to get elected.
Absolutely, no, I agree with that. We interviewed all the people that have been vetted through the National Party. We interviewed them at the start of December. We placed some of them into wards. Some of them, unfortunately, we put on the substitute bench at the moment.
Right.
And while we're waiting on the rest of the people who are going through the vetting to be vetted, and then we'll interview them and we'll see where we are. You're right. We need, as a party, to have really, really good people in post, because if we do take a council, then we need to make sure that we deliver for the people, because that is what they're desperate for. Absolutely crying out for. When I took the chairmanship of the branch, I said to the branch members, we had a large branch meeting that was attended by about 100 people. We've got nearly 1,000 members in my branch, which is very, very good. And I said, look, the goal ultimately has to. There's 3 goals. One is we take control of Halton Borough Council. So, in no particular order, or no particular order of priority, but take control of the council, secure and retain the Runcorn and Helsby seat, and win the Windus and Hillwood seat. Otherwise, what's the point? That's what we're about. So that's what we've got to focus on. So we've got to get good people in place. We've got to make sure that they're committed to it, and we've got to make sure that they are focused on the right things, shall we say.
Yeah. So Halton has been an absolutely solid Labour territory, hasn't it, for 50 years? Do you get the impression that the Labour voters are starting to come over, or are they coming over very quickly?
Yeah. So the Runcorn by-election obviously gave an indication that things are changing. We were speaking to people across the constituency, and we've been knocking on doors, and you can feel there's a change coming. Yeah. What we've got to break this habitual cycle of voting Labour. It's almost been people's birthright in this part of the world. They born, they vote Labour, pay their taxes, vote Labour, and die. That's what it's been, really. You've got to break that cycle. And once you break it once, you've got to make sure you repeat it, which is again back why we need good candidates in place, because we don't want, if people trust us now, we don't want to let them down because they'll just revert back to type. So we've got to break that cycle of voting Labour. I think we've seen them do it in Runcorn. We see from the canvas returns we're getting and witness it, they're prepared to do that as well. So we're in an interesting place. I think we'll. I'm not saying we'll win by landslides here, there, and everywhere, but I do think we'll win a good number of seats. Do think we'll win a good number of seats. Change is desperately needed. Desperately needed. I mean, I'm sure we'll come on to the kind of national picture in a second, but at local level, Halton Borough Council's bankrupt. There's a £19 million spending deficit. It can't fund its own day-to-day revenue expenditure. It borrows at high interest rates from central government just to continue to be active. If it was a private business, it would be wound up, be in administration and either pre-packed or sold or probably liquidated. The services are failing, all across the borough. You can see it. I mean, just look at some of the basic things, which people pick up. So I was speaking to someone back in the summer, and they were making the point that just look at the amount of weed growth in the channels. It's just there was no weed spreading. It just looked untidy. Grass wasn't cut. Litter wasn't being picked up. So the basics, the very, very basics of what a council should be doing were failing. Social care was in special measures, so Ofsted took it into special measure because it was a failing service, and failing the most vulnerable people in the borough. Again, a critical service, ultimately failing, and this comes back to the lack of governance, lack of capability to manage council budgets and something of that scale. We've got Labour Party members, and it's become a dynastic Labour authority. So you've got husband and wife, and children who are the members. And the problem with that is you can't enforce governance. You can't. Challenges don't take place. You don't have the rigor. Same in I've got my business. You just don't employ people, certainly not in the line reports, that are family members or direct friends or relations, because you just lose that rigor of challenge. And we've got it in local government here, which is, and then you just kind of follow that trend through, and you see this is a council that is badly managed. It's financially insolvent. Its services are failing. The local authorities, the councillors, don't have the capability to hold the officer core to account. I'm not saying everyone needs to be vastly experienced in business to be a local councillor, because we need an array of people and different people to represent people. But you need some sort of competence. You need some sort of life experience, because you're being tasked with managing and being responsible for tens of millions of pounds of public funds.
Yeah.
So quality of Labour candidates and Labour councils is really poor. The council's failing. So I do think we've got a real opportunity to secure a number of seats in May.
Can I say, in fairness to Halton Borough Council, they're not alone. Because the quality of the people that we have in Wirral, and also I'm sure up and down the country, is the same. It's just terrible. Have you any sympathy though with councils, because they're in this sort of cleft stick at the minute, whereby they have statutory legislation which compels them to do certain things, and they just don't have the money to be able to do it. So if you look at things like adult social care and special educational needs and so on, these are things which they are obliged to provide. And I wonder whether or not they're ever going to be able to.
Well, it's because demand is so significant in those particular areas. It's probably difficult to forecast it really in terms. Although you should have some ability to forecast your particular needs, but I suspect it's one of these service lines that you've got difficulty in really understanding what the budget should be, because anything could hit you. That said, I'm a great believer that government, local and central, needs to get out of the way. It needs to do what it should be doing and stop interfering in things it shouldn't be doing. And if you do that, you can begin to prioritise your resources and what you should be doing. I also think, local government in particular, but actually you can see it in the civil service as well. It's not run efficiently and effectively. The challenges that you would get in a private business, and I run a fairly substantial business. You've got a rigor right through the value chain in your employees, where people are challenging you, growing, you're constantly looking at productivity gains, and I just don't think that's the case within local government. So, you've also got this this almost belief that because it can't go bankrupt.
Well, you can have Section 114.
It can go bankrupt.
Yeah,
yeah, but you know what I mean. It's never going to.
No, the point is that
will always be.
But it's the main driver, isn't it? Because they don't have, you've got shareholders, and you know that what your company has to do is to make money. That's your raison d'etre. In local authorities, and in fact in any public sector area, they don't have that driver, and without that, they're never going to do it, are they?
There's no price mechanism
in
public services, and as a consequence of that, you misallocate your resources, or you can misallocate your resources, and you can't determine where you are most efficient, or where you need to improve your efficiency. And that is a reality. And that's why, back to, you need good people in post, and you need good people that are effective. One of the challenges, which I see, so Halton just employed a new chief exec. Guy might be a great guy. I don't particularly know his capabilities, but I look at, I was reading about his background, and he's been in local government all his life. So and he started up, and he became head of communities in Knowsley, and then subsequently got the chief executive job in Halton. And I just sometimes think, actually, people that have been a local authority officer, and they go out, and then suddenly they're running tens of £millions of budgets without any kind of financial management or ability to manage, services effectively, ability to manage the finances, because that's just the nature of their career. And it's, my daughter's a social worker, and I was having this conversation with her, and I said, look, you qualify as a social worker, you're a children's social worker today, but as you move up in your career, one day you might be director of social work, and suddenly you're in charge of tens of millions of pounds of budget, but you've never been financially managed. You've never managed finances like that. But because of the nature of the career path, that's what you end up as. So I think maybe some things we've got to change, and maybe break open the public sector to new ideas and people from the private sector, as opposed to just seeing that kind of career pathway as the only option for chief execs.
Yeah, I was having this conversation with somebody the other day, and I said, you imagine you're an accountant. So you've gone through your university, you've gone through your accountancy training, you're the brightest, smartest accountant in the place. Do you say to yourself, I think I'll go and see if there's a job in the local authority?
No, you don't. No, you don't. Oh. But somebody's got to do it. We've got to get it better. We've got to improve it. But for me, because there's no price mechanism in public services, it's really difficult to do it. But productivity improvements, better allocation of resources, get out of the way, stop doing things you don't need to do, and concentrate on, stick to the knitting, as I constantly say.
They all seem to want to be businessmen. They want to run their own. They want to buy property. They want to. You look on the finance side. They took out. I don't know if you've got any in Halton, but in Wirral, they took out hundreds of millions of pounds of lender option, borrower option loans, which are absolutely crippling the finances. So they make terrible decisions. And you're right. It's ultimately because they've got low quality people in charge.
Yeah. And that then comes back to why we have to have good councillors, because the councillors should set the policy and the political agenda and hold the officers and the executive teams to account. That's what they exist for. Otherwise, what's the point? You represent the people. You make sure that the people have a voice, because ultimately it's their money that's delivering those services, and their priorities should be reflected in how the council operates. So you need to hold executive to account. You need to dictate the policy framework and ensure it's implemented. What you've got, and you've probably got the same in the world. I think some of the people that are elected to councils, they've been there decades, and it's a lifestyle for them. So they become an important member of their community, or perceived important member of the community. But they get to go to the nice dinners and nice lunches, and they get to go to the memorial ball and all those kind of exciting things that they just wouldn't experience in in their professional life. So, unfortunately, they're letting us down, and they're letting everyone down.
In preparation for hopefully taking over the council in 2027, our group have been going along to a lot of meetings, council meetings, and you can also watch them online if you. But what you find is that these officers they run rings around the councillors. They introduce something and they're asked a question, and the question's not answered, but they don't. The councillors have got no impact on the decisions at all.
Yeah. Because in fairness, you look at someone that goes up to become a senior officer or a director in local authority. They're well qualified, they're experienced, they're well educated people. Whereas you have obviously some elected members who just don't have that background. So as you say, they'll run rings around them, and because it's their profession, they'll know more about it. So I think we need people who are elected, who have got a broad hinterland within their professional career. They've done things, they've been part of things. I'm not saying they all need to be very, very senior people, but they've got to have, you've got to have a real good experience of life in general, that they can bring to bear. And they've also got to have a personality that they can hold people to account.
Yep. When I Googled Halton Borough Council, and the only thing I could really see about it was that Halton Borough Council seemed to get the revenue from the Merseyflow Bridge, the Merseyside Gateway Bridge.
Yep.
And the number of people complaining because they've had bailiffs coming around and clamping their car because they got a fine on the bridge, 2 years ago or whatever, is colossal. So you're losing a lot of goodwill in that area.
Yeah, and funny enough, the bridge company is losing money as well. So again, it's just I mean, how you lose money on a compulsory toll is, but it's crazy. We get, as Halton residents, we get local user discount, so we get it for £10 unless you're in a higher. I think if you're in band H council tax, you don't get it. But I think there's about 3 houses in the whole borough that are kind of band H, but. So we get a subsidised crossing, but it's one of these places. If you go through the Mersey tunnels, you're physically going through a toll booth. You actually see it physically. When you're on the bridge, you don't see it. It's so you can't forget. So I understand.
The signage is not great either.
It's not great. It's not great. But us in Merseyside, realistically, we've got obviously the 2 tunnels that are tolled. We've got the bridge that's tolled. We've got, in fact, 2 bridges that are tolled. The original Runcorn Bridge and the new one. But elsewhere in the country, where have you got? We've got the QE2 bridge in Dartford, and we've got the M6 toll, and there must be maybe a handful of others. You've got to question why we are the only people that are paying a toll. Why would we got a bridge which was absolutely necessary, but we got to pay. Everyone's got to pay for it. It's just not added to the national infrastructure network, highways network. I just think we should be campaigning. We should be campaigning on that the repayments for the toll or repayments for the bridge are absorbed nationally.
Well, there's no tolls in Scotland, as you know.
No, I know. And actually, the new Forth Road Bridge is a carbon copy of the Mersey crossing, bizarrely. So,
right, let's get back to reform a bit. Have you had your special general meeting yet in Halton Branch?
No, not yet. In terms of for appointing candidates, so we obviously the SGM.
In terms of the officers.
Yes, so we did that. So I thought you meant in terms of appointing candidates, because obviously that was the party removed the SGM requirement for the candidates.
We've still to get our special general meeting yet, and I'm told because our elections aren't until 27, it's not a priority. So,
so we had that. It was back in late summer. So we've got 5 officers. Myself, we've got a deputy chair, we've got a treasurer, we've got a secretary, and we have a campaign director. So a good group of people. Very experienced. They're all been part of the by-election campaign. They've all been Reform members for a long time, and they've all been active politically. So, as a branch executive, it's a good team. But I'm hoping once we can formally announce the candidates that they're at the moment they'll be ward champions from the new year, but. once the candidates, that will strengthen that team, and then obviously if the people are elected, it will become even a much more stronger, a stronger group of people in Halton generally. And actually, we get a good turnout for each branch meeting. People are really active in terms of, their voice. They want their voices heard when we have branch meetings. They want to express the kind of challenges that they're facing locally. So on the whole, things seem to be in a good shape, really.
Yeah, good. Have you heard of something called the Carbon Capture and Storage Project in Liverpool Bay?
Yeah.
I don't know how much you speak to Sarah. I went one of the reasons going to our meeting the other week was to buttonhole her about this, because I know she's said a few things about it. There's a cement works, is it
Yeah.
no, it's a waste place in Runcorn, which is part of the scheme.
Yeah.
And I think I'm trying to desperately whip up a head of steam in the northwest to oppose it, because I think it is opposable. I don't know if you saw the Acorn scheme, which is the one up in the north of Scotland. That's been stopped, so it is stoppable. And I think if people knew about it, enough people knew about it in the area, about what it's doing and what the dangers are of it, I think there would be consternation.
Yeah. So I speak to Sarah fairly regularly, probably. We exchange texts maybe once a week, a couple of times a week maybe, and then just speak to her, catch up with her as and when, really. But yeah, we got kind of, hopefully, she needs us, we need her, kind of thing. So we've got to support her to retain the seat, and actually part of what she's doing, she's become really high profile. She'll be target number one in the general election, I think. But in terms of her presence and profile has helped reform in this area, and I think just beyond Halton, actually in the whole Merseyside and Cheshire area. I suppose the challenge for why Runcorn will be selected for something like that is because it's always been a chemical. It's always been a chemical area.
Yeah.
In EOS in particular, or ICI previously. And as those jobs dwindle, then they begin to see what is the alternative. But I probably tend to agree with you. I think we need to take a movement away into look at what is an alternative employment solution for those particular areas, rather than technology that may be still in its infancy. It's like,
well, it's an experiment, Jonathan.
exactly.
It's an experiment that hasn't succeeded anywhere in the world. So why the Scousers think they're going to make a success of burying 200 million tons of excrement into the Irish Sea, I have no idea.
Yeah.
But I could certainly use, if you're speaking to Sarah, maybe you could mention it to her, because we need some high profile. And I believe Esther McVeigh's on board with trying to stop it.
Yeah, Esther McVeigh would go to the opening of an envelope. She just on board with everything, really, isn't she? I'm happy enough to kind of pick up next week. I think one of the problems, in terms of, you look at it, what this area is scrambling about for is where's employment opportunities for people. So someone comes up with, as you say, an experimental option, but there's there's going to be jobs here. The light on it, because it's been a catastrophic failure of local government and central government in this particular area, but principally local government. The employment rate's high, youth unemployment rate's high, hope is low. You've got, a benefit class where people are choosing benefits as a career option.
And why not?
And why not? Exactly. Why not?
If you set the system up as it is, why would people not choose benefits?
It's the
best thing to do.
I absolutely agree. So they're looking for inward investment, but actually, I think the solution. So they're looking for inward investment, but they're also, bizarrely enough, they're thinking that the way out for the economic growth for Runcorn is and witnesses is tourism, and I live here. I like it, but I'm not sure I'm not sure I'd want to spend a fortnight of my holidays here if it was looking for somewhere. But what we've got is a fundamental skills gap in young people in particular. So, how do they get access to employment? How do they retrain? And there's no entrepreneurialism, there's no business formation. It's been, anyone that makes a profit in an area that's controlled by, or heavily controlled by the Labour Party, as we've been, is almost this persona non grata. They don't want to encourage people to be successful. So you can't then blame businesses that close down and move out and move to other places where they do. So then they alight on, here's an opportunity. We'll get a big inward investment, but actually, there's better ways to do it, I think. And I really firmly believe we've got to start giving. We'll always have people that just want to spend their life on benefits and don't do anything. But there are people who are desperate to exit that. And we've got to give them the opportunity to do that, and that means skill enhancement, capability. We've got to look at technical skills rather than just completely academic skills, to give them that opportunity.
And how upfront, going onto a national level now, how upfront do you think reform need to be with the electorate in terms of explaining to them where we are, what the challenges are, and what we're going to do about it, even if it is saying we are going to have to cut welfare considerably?
I fully think the country is open for it. I fully believe that people recognise that we are in a deep, deep hole, and they're open for change. I suppose one of the silver lining is it's got this bad that people are now prepared to listen to, the reality.
Yeah,
that's it.
I agree with you entirely. I think that's exactly where we are, and I think it's when you tell people the raw facts that we're spending 112 billion pounds each year just servicing our debt.
Yeah.
Then we have all these councils, World Borough Councils borrowing more money from the government. The whole thing's just completely unsustainable.
It is. We've got people in central government, quality people. We've got a government. We've got a parliament, actually, not just a government. We've got a parliament packed with people that came out of think tanks or worked in Conservative Central Office or Labour Central Office or worked for the Lib Dems or worked for an aligned think tank, and then they've got the route into Parliament, or they were advisor to an MP, and then they got a route into Parliament, and actually they've never experienced anything, and then they wonder why things are going extremely badly. And then we end up with a government and a cabinet of people who, I don't think there's anyone that's worked in the private sector at all in the cabinet, and I cannot believe that is a remotely credible position for people to accept as the government. We're being governed by the provisional wing of the social work profession, I think, at the moment, and our social policies dictating everything, and it's causing economic carnage. I run a business. I'm the MD of a fairly large business. We're probably the largest electrical contractor in the country. We've got about 500 engineers. Simple things. The NI rate increase, so the threshold decrease, bring it down to $5,000, and the rate increase, taking it to 15%, was a significant increase in our burden costs last year. This year we've done a calc myself, and I asked my finance director to run the calc for me last week. We're looking at about 200,000 of additional salary costs just from the minimum wage increase.
Yeah,
and it's at the lower end of the skill spectrum, so we can't pass that on to our customers. So that'll be from April. We got a 200k hit, which is significant. So what do? Those levels at the kind of lower skill level, unskilled, lower skill level administrative roles, you can't really grow it. You can't grow your productivity to absorb that, with the exception of moving into automation, significant automation. That means people lose their jobs. So by increasing the minimum wage to such a level, it's £26,500 it comes out as now. That's not an entry level job. That's not a minimum wage job. So you price people out of the market. You look at businesses like myself, where I'm now having to take some serious decisions about, actually, do we just automate everything and take out that level of that role, that level of role, and that's probably likely what's happening. And I would imagine everyone that's an MD around the country, similar to me, running businesses, is making exactly the same decisions. exactly the same. And so we end up with higher unemployment as a consequence of these people that simply do not know what they're doing. And the perception that the private sector can just absorb these additional costs all the time is for the it's for the bees. It's absolute nonsense.
Yeah, I mean, I think that first budget that Rachel Reeves brought out was absolutely catastrophic for the country.
Mm.
I mean,
Yep.
I have an interest in a hospitality business, or had an interest in the hospitality business, and what she did to the hospitality industry by
Mm.
the national insurance increases, she stopped the rates relief
Yep.
and put the minimum wage up, and so suddenly, we used to employ a number of people who were 16 to 18,
Yeah.
20, and we could employ them at a relatively low rate. Suddenly we're looking at £5 an hour increases for all of these
Mm.
people, and we just can't absorb it. So what
Nope.
will happen is that the business will close, and so next year, instead of the VAT, the um, employment wages, and all of the taxes that we pay, which I don't know what
Yeah.
we hundreds of thousands of pounds, that will not be going into the exchequer next year because the business won't be there. It won't be doing
No.
anything. And
No.
now that's one small example, but that must be happening up and down the country.
It will be. It will be. And what did they say? They won't want to raise tax on working people, or want to raise anyone's taxes. I don't know where she thinks that people, where the money comes from to pay additional national insurance contributions and minimum wage hikes. It comes from your product, your service, your product price. So ultimately, the people pay it. I mean, it's crazy. These people just don't know what they're doing, and it's time for significant change. So, do we, as a party, need to be open and honest? Yes, we absolutely do. I think the electorate are up for it, and we've got to be open and honest with them because there's going to be some really radical decisions to be taken on day one. Day one. That's before you even get into all the whole debate about immigration and whatnot. But from an economic perspective, we should be open that we're in serious problems. It can't continue. We've got to make some radical changes. We've got to reduce the size of the state. I read Danny Kruger's part that he issued earlier in the week. And I think he's right. Look at HR, look at the DEI roles across the civil service, reduce that. But that's not going far. That's not going anywhere near far enough. It's not. It needs to look at role profiles across the civil service to see if there's efficiency and there's value being driven out of them. But equally, I think you've got to start taking a view of what does the government exist to do and stop doing the things that it doesn't exist to do or it shouldn't exist to do, where there's no market failure.
Well, we've done a good job of depressing ourselves.
I'm quite happy at the moment.
Assuming we can get in whenever 2029 or whatever, do we really want to? Do we want to inherit this mess?
Yeah. I think we need to. I think we'll be. I don't see anyone that sat here 18 months after the Labour Party were elected and thinking, "Oh, this is going well. We'll have more of this." So I think the country's open for it. I think they're ready for it. I think we will be successful. I think we'll win the general election, and we need to win it because if we don't, this is the last chance for the country. It really is the last chance of the country, not just economically but socially as well. It's the last chance, and we got to win it. I think the only fly in the ointment would be tactical voting in constituencies where you've got people that would float between Labour, Green and Lib Dem, perhaps to keep us out. But I don't think they'll have the numbers. I just don't think they'll have the numbers.
But don't you think that's past a bit, that all this business where all you need to do is to turn around and call us racists and nobody would vote for us? Yeah. That's kind of gone, I think, hasn't it?
No, that's that, and the whole Nazi thing is people just it's been so diluted. Everyone's a racist and Nazi apparently. So if everyone is, then no one is, and that's the point because they've slung it about so randomly and haphazardly that it doesn't have any purchase now. No one cares. Those days are gone. The world is tilting back. It's moving back. It's correcting itself, I think, and people are saying, well, actually, no, they're not. They're just people that care about the country and want to do the best for us.
Yeah. I agree entirely. Well, look, you're obviously a very competent individual, Jonathan. Can I say that?
Oh, thank you very much.
What ultimately within the party, what would the ultimate ambition be? I mean, you're saying you're going to stand for council in Halton. Would you stand as an MP?
That's my that's I have stood twice
Have you?
previously. So I was a member of the Conservative Party. I stood in 2001 in Stretford-on-Ormston in a Target seat. That was quite an interesting parliamentary campaign. Katie Price, also known as Jordan, stood.
Yeah.
So it was quite high profile. We had a lot of, I was exposed to a lot of kind of national interest at the time. So that was quite interesting for me. Bev Hughes was the MP, and I remember there was a headline, and I think it was the Daily Mirror, I think. Beauty versus the Beast, which was quite good. So yeah, I had some good fun there. So I stood there, and then I stood in 2005 in Weaver Vale. And then when Cameron was elected, the Conservative Party kind of, I don't know, it changed. It evolved into New Labour, I think. And that's where it is now. It's basically New Labour. So it left me. And I also became really disillusioned with some of the views that were coming out of the Conservative Party. The A-list they created for candidates was completely anathema to me. If I believe in meritocracy. I believe in small limits.
Is that when all the left wingers, all the Lib Dems, is that when they
Lib Dems joined the Conservative Party basically and turned it into the Lib Dems or New Labour, I suppose. SDP probably is probably a more accurate description. The SDP. So I left, joined UKIP. I was really passionate about actually the exit from the European Union, so campaigned for leave. I think it was the right thing to do. It was always, and it is always about. If somebody asked me why I voted leave, it's always about sovereignty to me. It wasn't about immigration, although that was obviously quite high profile, but it was all about sovereignty and actually having control of the country. So was passionate about that, and then just got involved, just got back, going to earn some money, go and do some things professionally. And then I joined Reform a few years ago and thought, actually, I want to get back into it. I'm a much more rounded individual than I was when I stood in 2001, 2005. Much more experience. I've got greater capability. I've got much more to offer. So what's the ambition? Yeah, it would be Westminster.
Good. Well, yeah. I mean, I don't think I would want to do. I stood last time, but I don't think I would stand for it again. But I wish you well. And I think I can probably help a little bit in that you've got these elections coming up in May of next year. Now, I think I can probably get 30 or 40 people from the Wirral branch to come down and help and so on, because we've got a strong branch and we've got a lot of people who are very enthusiastic. So you're only 25 minutes down the road, so I can't see why we can't do that. So
you'd be more than welcome.
Yeah, if there's anything good's come out of the podcast, that's maybe it.
More than that. I think mutual aid is going to be important for us across the. I don't just mean Halton. I just mean generally across the kind of Wirral, South Cheshire, or Wirral, Cheshire, North Cheshire, even Warrington. Simply because we've got committed people. We've got people who are a lot of supporters, but how committed are they to get out and do a knock on the door? We'll probably end up with a core cohort of people who are active, and we should support each other because you can blitz a ward with 40 people in a couple of hours. Whereas if you've got one or two people trying to do it themselves, it takes days. So I think we'll probably end up all supporting each other, which is the right thing to do.
And it's more fun doing things together as well. If you've got a crowd of people, it's a lot more fun than trying to do it on your own.
Definitely. So.
Good. Well, look, thanks very much indeed for being on the podcast. I appreciate it. And hopefully we'll meet again shortly in terms of the elections and so on. But in the meantime, thanks very much.
No problem, Ken. Thanks a lot. Cheers.
Cheers.